Hey, I'm Cedric Chambers, and I would like to welcome you to another episode of the 3D Podcast, a masterclass where we share with you everything you need to know about how to transform diversity and inclusion in your organization as well as in your community. We're on a mission to amplify the voices of leaders that are making an impact in the world today so that we can have a better tomorrow. Our goal every episode is to keep it simple, honest, and transparent with you by uncovering the truths in diversity and inclusion with the hope of creating behavioral change, all while presenting it from a unique perspective. So look, if you're ready, get your notepad out, pour you a drink, and let's dive deep as we discuss the dimensions of diversity. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the 3D Podcast, where we speak to real practitioners that are making real change in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. I'm excited for our show today as we are speaking to Courtney Jones, a game changer in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Courtney is currently a diversity, equity, and inclusion independent consultant. She decided to make this leap and start her own consultancy after leaving her previous role as the Senior Vice President of Client Experience for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at United Minds, a Weber Shandwick consultancy. Prior to United Minds, Courtney worked at Nielsen as the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and has co-authored several thought leadership reports, including Listen Up, a profile of multicultural music listeners, and not one but two African American consumer reports highlighting the significant purchasing power and influence of African American consumers. Courtney currently resides in Atlanta, Georgia, and is a proud magna cum laude graduate of Florida A&M University, where she earned her MBA in marketing and bachelor's degree in business management. Look, I'm excited for this discussion, so I hope you are too. So without further ado, let's jump into the discussion with Courtney Jones. Hey, Courtney, how you doing today?
Hey, Cedric, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, blessed, highly favored, sitting on the right hand, all that good stuff. Look, glad we could connect today. Look, I'm excited for the discussion. Look, I did a brief bio, but I know there's a lot more to you. And so what I really want to do is as we start off and we create the foundation and set the scene for the discussion, I want you to provide just a little bit more into your background for the audience, give an overview so that we can understand your journey, your career, how you got into the space, and just kind of who you are and provide a little bit more insights there.
Yeah, that's a lot. I started actually in a completely different industry. I worked in pharma for a while and realized like I was not feeling that and left that industry altogether. But I really did have an appreciation for advertising and marketing and how all of that happens. And more so on the media side of things. And so when I left pharma, I did a brief stint working for television stations, selling advertising for television stations. And then that brought me to my previous employer, Nielsen, and I was there for 14 and a half years doing all sorts of things. But really the through line, across all the roles that I had really was diversity and inclusion, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now we add belonging into it, but we even had all those buzzwords. I've been working in the space. And so it started out really with working with community affairs and government relations. So really doing our company's like outreach to the community, explaining the company, who we are, what we do, how we do it. But it really was with multicultural consumers and in the multicultural community, which led to those like thought leadership pieces that you were talking about, just really helping the industry to understand the value of multicultural consumers. Obviously, really want to focus on Black consumers, African American, really from an empowerment perspective. Exactly.
Yep.
From an empowerment perspective, because, no matter how much money you make, you are spending that money with brands and they should value the dollars that you spend. And so that started my love or my mission and purpose around how we help to just empower our people to understand, the value that we bring to all of these things. I didn't have words for it then. Now everybody how much we influence the culture and, everything pretty much starts with us. And so, it has had many iterations, but I started this work a long time ago. And I'm thankful that it has brought me this far. And I love that everybody else is focused on it too.
No, it's always good to know the impact, right, that we've had, an impact that you've had in your career. So it sounds progressive in your career, kind of your journey moving along. And so as you've navigated through your career, like what are some of those principles that you follow to just help you be successful?
Obviously, like, the journey wasn't without its stumbles and its mistakes, but I think what really grounds me is working hard. I think we hear from our parents, work twice as hard, do all that sort of thing. I don't necessarily buy into the work twice as hard now. I think about how I work and working smarter. And what I mean by working smarter is building a network and making sure that you surround yourself with smart people, often smarter than you, because they're going to help you to grow. I also think building that network, not just of my peers, but also feeling really comfortable and confident with tapping senior people. Like, I like the way that person moves. I'm going to learn from them. I'm going to, bring into my circle, into my, a good friend of mine calls it like the board of advisors that you have, or the people that you seek to help coach you through and how to navigate these spaces. So I think those are some of the things that have helped me really grow. It's just like working hard initially, but realizing sometimes working hard is not necessarily like I'm spending 12 hours a day, doing this, but it's working smarter. Like, how do I surround myself with the right people to help get the job done?
Well, I'm glad that you've learned and kind of captured those things as you're going throughout your career, because as others are coming up, right, these are some great things that we can always look to, because I know that, and when you said it, I'm like, how many times have I heard that you got to work twice as hard, right, and to do something. And I always thought to myself, like, how do I quantify that? I also felt that as a Black person, and just in the context in which we heard it, I like automatically knew what it meant. Right. But at the same time, twice as hard doesn't necessarily mean hours. Right. Doesn't necessarily mean, we got to be, day and night working. It could be, like you said, working smarter, understanding the things that you need to do in order to get to that place and be successful. So
sometimes the harder is working outside of your comfort zone. I think thing, especially as Black people, Black women specifically, we aren't taught how to advocate for ourselves. Like I think that we enter the workforce thinking, head down, I'm going to work hard. They're going to see the value in my work. They're going to see how hard that I work. And yes, that does happen. And you'll get your recognition. You might get a raise. You might even get a little title bump. But when it comes to having somebody be an advocate for you and sitting in the room when you're not there and speaking your name when you're not there to put you up for stretch opportunities and things like that, the hard part is working to cultivate that network, like working to cultivate the sponsors that you have, like the people who are in a position to put your name in front of those making decisions around how you're really going to move in your career. So, and hard because we are not taught to like toot our own horn. It's just, we think about, I just got to do this work and they're going to see how hard that I work. And that will happen. But you got to ask for what you want. And you got to advocate for it.
Nice. This is a great segue here. So when thinking about that, putting your head down, working, hoping that gets you the recognition. When it comes specifically to Black women, and today we're digging into Black women in leadership and really trying to unravel and really go deep into this topic here. But when it comes to kind of putting your head down and just doing the work, is that something that is taught, or is it something is that like a natural thing? Like when you see that and you see kind of that happening, Black women putting their head down, hoping that the recognition happens, not advocating, going out and getting advocates, not going out and getting sponsors. Kind of where do you see that disconnect, right? When you look at other groups and how they go out and approach their careers and what they're trying to do, especially because a lot of other groups aren't afraid to get in front of people, rub shoulders, do what they need to do. So where is that a cultural thing? Do you see that as like, what is that? Where do you see that coming from?
I think it's part culture, but I also think it's part just the way that we're taught and the way that we're raised, and also just the level of comfort that we have. Oftentimes, and we are seeing more people of color in higher places, but if you think about how you establish a camaraderie with people, it's often people that you share some life experiences with. Like you connect something like, oh, we went to the same school, we grew up in the same area. Yeah. There's some shared life experience that allows you to connect. And if the senior most leaders don't look like you, they didn't grow up where you grew up, you don't enjoy the same things, you're not in the same life stage, it's harder to foster that sort of relationship. I think in addition to just the way that we're taught, it's also, it feels fake. Like, I'm like, let's meet for coffee. And then you meet for coffee and you're like, well, what are we going to talk about? Like, like, you know what I mean? And so it is just harder for us to establish that connection because we're trying to look for a place of authenticity. Like it's hard for us to fake the funk, so to speak. And this corporate thing, it is a game. It really is. And it's not, and I'm not saying like be fake, but it's a little bit harder for us to get to that, like, oh, how are we going to connect outside of always talking about work?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like, if I don't like you, I don't like you. Like I'm
exactly. And sometimes it's not even like, I don't like you. Sometimes it might just be like, we not moving in the same circles. Like we don't like, I mean, for lack of a better word, like you don't know my life. Like how are we gonna connect in a certain way? So, again, I think is finding ways to create those connections with people. It's probably not. It's gonna take you outside of a comfort zone because it's probably not somebody who looks like you. It's probably not somebody who grew up where you grew up or in the same type of environment that you grew up. Y'all might have not gone to the same school. So it's just really figuring out, how do I connect with this person separate from the work that we do?
Yeah, that makes sense. So let me ask you this. When you think about building that network and getting advocates and sponsors in your career, like when did that dawn on you? Like what was that step or that point to where you was like, hey, the playing field isn't level, I need to think outside of this, the way I've been taught and start to, find the sponsors, the advocates. Like when did that dawn on you?
Yeah, I will say it actually started before my career.
Okay.
We'll give a shout out, Florida A&M University. So the dean of our school, Dean Sybil C. Mobley, who is I mean, I can't say enough about her, but
I heard.
Yeah. So Dean Mobley really took pride in teaching us about the soft skills. It's not college curriculum. It's not what you would learn in a book. It's the soft skills. And part of that was building a network, how to move in a networking environment, how to craft your kind of 30-second elevator pitch about who you are, what you do, what your interests are. And so the seed was planted there. I have always felt very comfortable with seeing where I wanted to go. And so no matter where I was, and again, I go back to being at FAM and in SBI, the School of Business and Industry.
Using that FAM terminology. Come on now. Savannah, say it. Whoop, whoop. had to throw that in there.
All HBCU love. We were always taught, seek the person in the room that's in the position that you want to be in. So anytime that I found myself interested in a different business area or was watching like a town hall or being in a meeting and I'm like, that person, like, I like what they do. I want to learn more about it. And honestly, that's how I started building that network. To go back to your question around when did I know that the playing field wasn't level? I feel like I always knew that. I think the first time I really experienced it was when I had a manager who was a white woman. And long story short, we had an incident, I will say. We had an incident. Again, going back to advocating for myself, I approached the manager and I said, the way this situation went down, I feel like there was a big disconnect. And can we get some time next week to talk about it? And because in the moment I couldn't, because I was very, very mad. But the next week we had a conversation, and it was very much like how you and I are talking right now. Like, from my side of things, here's what I think happened, or here's how I view what happened. Here's how I think that I could have handled the situation differently. As my manager, here's how I thought that you could have helped in that situation.
Yeah. And
I was like, for the future, I think we both know. And I went, I thought we squashed it after that.
Yeah.
And fast forward maybe 3-4 months later, in my review, I get this, Courtney doesn't deal well with conflict. I think she might have actually been aggressive, like, those types of very charged words when it comes to being a Black woman. I feel like I was definitely getting painted with that angry Black woman brush. And that was really the first time that blatantly, in a work environment, that a person of 40 made me feel like I was being judged in a different way than others. Because this manager had actually had fights with other people on our team. Like, it was kind of a toxic work environment, but like screaming matches. And I'm not, I'm not that. You're not going to get me screaming in a meeting and going back. I'm just not going to engage in that way. I think I was consciously not being angry and things like that. And yeah, that's the first time that I was like, oh, okay, there's some different playbooks. Like, these things, they look different.
Yeah. Going through that experience, and this takes us to the next piece here, is like, how did you just personally deal with it? Like, did you have a network? Did you have like close people who you could share with, like to be able to bounce ideas and thoughts and share, kind of open up to, like, just a support system? Did you have a support system at that time?
At work, not so much.
Yeah.
My support system really was, like my friends they're also in corporate America navigating this space.
Yeah.
And I even went to my parents about, like, how would you, now my mom was not corporate, but my dad was. I think it's generational too. Like, my friends were like, oh, nah, forget her. Like, your first reaction is like, you're going to advocate for your friend, My mentor at the time did tell me, look, you did what you thought you needed to do.
Yep.
Which I did. He gave me a couple of scenarios that I could, like, how to navigate the space. Like, you can, and it's all the corporate stuff. You can go to HR and talk about that this relationship between you and your manager is probably not the best relationship for you. You don't see your career growing, things like that. You can leave the company, because people often leave bad managers. They don't leave, like, the company necessarily. So there were a couple different scenarios. And honestly, coming out of that, I really loved my company. And I said, I'm not leaving this company.
Yeah.
But this will be the last time that this person has the opportunity to treat me in this way or to rate me this way. Like, this person will no longer have an impact on my career. And so I kind of set a plan in place that within a year I was going to move into another job. And I did.
That's powerful. Look, being able to come out of the situation and being able to just have the right mindset, right? Not let that, deter you from what your goals were and what you're trying to do is even more amazing. Because sometimes I can feel it could get to us, right? If we let the wrong manager, right, say the wrong thing, and it's like we almost take it as that's who we are versus that's just that person's opinion of who we are. And so the fact that you were able to do that, I mean, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I think I'm a big, like, quotes person. And I mean, there's a quote out there. It's not about what happens to you. It's about how you react to it. And, when you let an individual take your power away, I made the decision, like, yes, I was still mad at her. I'm not going to lie.
Yep.
But I also was like, you know what? She can't take who Courtney is. Like, it's her opinion of me, but that doesn't define me. I know who I am. I know whose I am. And she's going to get to define me. And I just had to keep saying it. Like, that's how she feels.
Yeah.
entitled to her opinion.
Whew, boy.
It's not me.
Yeah, y'all better know. Y'all mess with Courtney tonight. Look, it's gonna be some consequences and repercussions. So when we think about transitioning here, when we think about leadership, Black women in leadership, and kind of looking at it from a corporate perspective, and taking into account some of the things that you just spoke about, why are there so few? Like, what is that? When we think about that leadership, VP, SVP, CEOs, like, why do we see just so few in those positions?
I think that's so complicated. But here's what.
I know. You just lay it out. Walk us through
right.
it.
Here's a few reasons why I think. One is about what I talked about earlier, and having actual sponsors, not mentors, because mentors and sponsors are different things.
Say that.
So, and having the person who is sitting in the room speaking your name when you're not there, and talking about like, no, this is the right person for this role. And it's just that simple. I know people are like, oh, apply for this job, do that. No, there are people in power who can literally say, that's the person for this job. And so that's one of the reasons, because often they are not speaking our names as Black women, which is why I say cultivate those advocates for you. And that is not comfortable.
Yeah.
It's not and it's the long game. It's the chess match versus playing this game of checkers.
Yep.
At a point in time when you cultivate those relationships, you build up enough that you do say to that person, listen, here's what I want to do. Here's where I want to go. And I need you to help me get there. The wonderful thing about where we are just in the world, in corporate America right now, is that Black women, we're like unicorns right now.
Yeah.
And so when you are good at what you do and you have those advocates, that's all they got to do is put your name there. You're going to do the work.
Yeah, you're going to show out.
You're going to show out. So you just need somebody to put your name out there. That's one, that we just don't have enough advocates. And two, and hashtag unpopular opinion, we don't always lift as we climb.
Ooh.
We don't. And I will give an example. And this is one of the things that probably has hurt me the most in my corporate career. And by hurt, I just mean like I was, oh man, like I felt like dejected when somebody said this to me. So I was talking to a Black leader at a previous company that had a very, very strong performing team, diverse, strong performing team. And at one point, this person's team, like 2 or 3 people were promoted, and like 2 or 3 other folks on the team who were also like absolutely primed for promotion as well, like all strong performers.
Yep.
And I remember saying to the leader, like, oh, how did you make the decision? Because your team is strong across the board. You built a great team. How did you make the decision as to, who's getting promoted? And thinking that they were going to tell me about like how they assess their team. And the leader said to me, well, I can't promote everybody because it can't look like I'm promoting all the Black people, or actually the team was like Black and Hispanic, but like I can't look like I'm, do it. And I was like, what? And this is that was kind of a mentor to me. And I remember being so defeated by that, because I'm like, why would you even think that?
Yeah.
I will say this. In my time as I've grown, recruiting people, hiring people, I recruit across the board.
Yep.
And I definitely look to build a strong team. But I will say I have always hired a person of color. Whether that be from the Hispanic community, from the Black community, Asian, like I believe strongly in that.
Yep.
And that might take some people off. And once someone did come to me and said, hey, I know the last couple of people that you've recruited, actually, I think they said have been Black. I'm like, Yeah. Now this was another person of color.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Oh, you don't worry about that?" And I was like, "No." And they were like, "Yeah, you don't think they're going to think the Black girl always hires only Black people?" And I was like, "No, I don't think they'll think that because the people are strong."
Mm-hmm.
But until someone asks my white counterpart about their hiring decisions, I'm not going to worry about mine.
Mm.
I do think that there are those out there that worry about that, worry about the perception that you're only hiring Black people or people of color.
Yeah.
And I have never felt the need to defend any of my hiring decisions because, again, I feel like it's been strong talent.
Yeah.
And so as long as I'm not just like, I'm hiring a Black girl, I'm gonna hire the best talent, but I'm a source in underrepresented pools.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That mindset, right, of, just thinking about, hey, you hiring all these Black people, like, to even to hear that, and I know it's a perception, and it's to a certain extent conditioned, and kind of, how some people think in those ways, right? It gives you that sense that, not only do we have these forces against us, but then we also have, the ones
Be our own people.
I know. Look, all skin folk and kinfolk, but I mean, like, it's just like, so thinking about advocating, and you also said lifting as we climb. I mean, I love that, but that's just another piece to where when you look at some of the organizations and you, like you said, you see one person, and you're like, and not only across the board on that, at their level, do you see just them, but then you go deeper, like you said, look at their team. Like, what's happening, what's going on. And if we don't get that support, if we can't look and be able to, know that we come into an organization and we have some type of connection and some type of, even if it's not, we're not saying, hey, come hire me, but at the same time,
Right.
the situation, the struggle, and how difficult it is, and doing everything you can to make that path easier, right, is necessary, right? Because when being in the HR circle and understanding how those talent reviews come up, like you said, is what they say, is not what you know, but who you know, but it's actually who knows you. Because if your name doesn't come up in the situation,
knows what you can do.
Yeah, right. And that's if your name isn't coming up in the conversation when they say who's on the slate for succession planning, if the name is not in the discussion, then at the end of the day, you could be doing the best work, you can have the best, everything, but
and you're getting passed over
every time. Man, this is interesting.
You are absolutely correct. And it's also incumbent on those of us who are getting promoted and having a seat at the table to also call out our peers to say, you know what? You don't have any people of color on your team. You don't have any women on your team. Maybe it's somebody you don't have any men on your team. Just to raise the mirror to your peers too. Like, we be holding each other accountable for as we climb, because it's all of our responsibilities.
Yeah. And so even thinking about, we leadership, while there's so few, and now when we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, there are a lot of programs that are coming out. There are a lot of things that are happening within organizations. But when those programs are implemented, where do you think those programs fail when it comes to kind of lifting Black women up? Like, is it, actually, let me stop there, because I don't want to kind of get into your answer, but where do you think those programs fail when it comes to specifically lifting Black women up?
Honestly, we fail at the intersections. So when we think about intersectionality, which is, people talk about intersectionality all the time now, where D&I and DE&I fails is this statement: we need more women in leadership. The first thought, women in leadership, and I don't care what anyone says, it is white women. And there are plenty of organizations that, yes, are just failing women across the board.
Yep.
And I'm not saying I'm not out here rooting for white women too. That is not a full stop sentence. So we need more women in leadership.
Yeah.
You are absolutely correct. We also need more Black women in leadership.
Say it.
Right. We need more Black people in leadership. Honestly, a lot of times, Black men benefit from that.
Mm-hmm.
That's also not a full statement. We need more Black women in leadership. And I will say this because I will advocate for my LGBTQ plus community as well. I was actually on a call of DE&I practitioners, and we were talking about the intersections and intersectionality. And someone said, oftentimes the toughest position to be in an organization is a gay Black woman.
Yeah, 3 different people pulling.
Right. And not for nothing, again, we need to advocate for our LGBTQ plus community.
Yeah.
A lot of times gay white men benefited.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that to discount the strides that any marginalized community has made. But I say that in response to the answer to your question around how has it failed Black women, it fails at the intersection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because everybody else gonna kind of get that consideration before Black women.
Yep. And probably like 5 or 6 years ago, great friend of mine told me that they were doing events for a women's affinity group at their organization. And when they got to the event, they ended up inviting 100 women. And when they got to the event, they saw one Black woman at the event. And so when they went back to the organizers after the event and said, "Hey, what happened? Like, why didn't you do more promotion? Why didn't you go to the African American BRGs X, Y, and Z, Hispanic BRGs X, Y, and Z?" She said, "Well, we promoted it to the women's group." And what she told me in that moment, in a nice way, when she had the conversation, was that she had to explain that when I view myself, Black comes first. And so you can't just promote to women thinking that everybody in that group you're capturing everybody, right? You're casting a wide net without having to go to the various different subgroups, the various different places to make sure that you're actually getting an inclusive group of people. And so it was always something that stuck in my mind. She was like, "My name is blank and I'm a Black woman." And she started to go down like describing who she was. She said, "I'm gonna always describe myself that way in that order." And I was like,
right.
What?
Yeah.
That's something for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And honestly, the other women who are kind of included in that statement should also look around and be like, wait a minute, there are no Black women here. And that's what allyship to Black women looks like. Like if you in the room as a woman and you looking around and everybody still is the same hue that you are, that's and that's what I mean by lift as we climb. It's not just a Black people lift as we climb, Black women. It's all groups that are underrepresented. You know what it felt like when you were outside looking in. So now that you're inside, you got to look around and be like, who else is not here?
Yeah. And that's it's critical. And sometimes you hear, and I used to hear the saying is that you send the elevator back down. But in some cases, we got to get to that mindset that, hey, before the door closes, we need to pull in 4 or 5 people because we need to go up together. But not only just to have more leadership, but the support, right? And then when you multiply your efforts, they can each get 5, 6, 10 people on their own and bring them through the ranks and do what they need to do. Because if we're not at the space to where we're hand in hand lifting each other, right? And we're doing those things that's needed. I mean, at the end of the day, no one else is going to do it for us, right? I mean, we have to, all else fails, we have to make sure that we got each other at the end of the day going through this process, whether male, a woman, whether you're Black, Hispanic, like we've all experienced it in some way, shape, form, or fashion. And we shouldn't want anybody else to experience it, right? And we should try to make, the situation better for the next generation and the next group coming behind us as we navigate through this. And so, I mean, this is, so just hearing the conversation and like, it's so many things that run through my mind when I think about the different leaders and I think about the people who've been influential in my career that were Black women that, those conversations are like no other, right? At the end of the day, right? Give you the information, but then keep it real with you, but then make sure that, look, they're gonna build you up but then not hold any bars, right, to make sure that you're prepared for what's coming, because, nothing that they were saying or doing was worse than what you encounter when you come into, some of these other environments, right? And so I definitely think, those Black women for being those influential pieces and figures in my career here. So no, this is
Oh
good.
yeah.
This is
That's
good.
you have to. Like
Yeah.
I think anybody that has ever worked with me or for me,
Yeah.
or even that I've recruited, they will say, like, I still have a young man that I brought into a previous organization. He calls me auntie, like that's what we're gonna
That's a culture
look
thing.
out for. It's a culture thing. It's a culture thing. We are going to look out because that's what we do. And sometimes now is also telling you messing up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's work through how you fix this.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's almost like I'm not about to let you go out here looking crazy.
Yeah.
You represent all of us.
Yeah. When you become auntie, that look. They'll do
Right.
anything for you. Look, when you become auntie, look,
right.
we'll go to the end of the earth for auntie. Like, look, we
Right.
got you. Ain't nobody talking crazy. Not when I'm around. And so
exactly. And that's what you need. You need the piece. So to your point about, somebody pulling somebody in the elevator with you,
mm-hmm.
it's, you need the 360 view.
Yeah.
You might be tunnel focused on like, oh, I'm about to kill this presentation. I'm about to do this, I'll do that. But you need somebody looking out for you on the sides and on the back, because you never know when the knife gonna come out.
There you go. Look, and I tell you this is even, I mean, this is just it's a culture, right? But even with, I would say this, I did my undergrad at HBCU, right? Savannah State represent. And then I did my grad degree, which you'll say PWI. And so
which is fine.
I was good, right? I love the experience. But when I think about the experiences that I had at Savannah State versus at the university, it was completely different. But then, to be honest, I had, some professors who were, really making sure that, hey, nobody's going to be easy on you. I'm not going to be easy on you, but I'm doing it for a reason. They'll always make sure that, they'll pick you up along the way. But then when I got into my grad degree, I promise you, it felt like, man, this is easy. like the situation that, HBC was a lot tougher. Like, I'm like, y'all, this is, come on now. Y'all,
you got hazed up.
We grading on a curve. What you talking about? Ain't no such thing as a curve at HBC.
right.
That 69 is a 69. You fail.
Right. What I think it is, I will always advocate for HBCUs.
Yep.
I'm an advocate for education, period. Mm-hmm. But, there are people who will say like, oh, do we really need HBCUs now?
Yep.
And I'm like, yes, because they are critical. Mm-hmm. Because the one thing that I felt going to Florida A&M University is that the professors, even on up to the dean and the president, they are invested in your success.
It's different.
As an individual, it's different.
Yeah, it's different.
It really is. And it's not like you're one of 350 people in this, general classroom. Like, you are an individual, and I am invested in your success. Mm-hmm. And what that looks like is you getting out of here and being prepared for this world, whether you choose entrepreneurship, whether you choose to go into corporate America, wherever you end up landing, they're going to give you all the tools that you need to be successful.
Yeah, no, that's a definite. So we've taken kind of the approach on kind of, ways that Black women can make sure that they're, looking for advocates and going through that process for themselves. As it relates to, let's just say the DE&I leader who's listening to this podcast, who's viewing us, and they're working through, what can I do to specifically help Black women in my organization? What can leaders do? What 2 to 3 actions can they take to be able to make sure that they're on the side of helping Black women be successful, whether that be in corporate America or wherever?
I would say I've said it a couple of times today, but sponsorship.
Yep.
Like, thinking about who do I see working hard that doesn't seem to be moving.
Yep.
And specifically be intentional about the Black woman who is working hard. They might not even be on your team.
Yeah.
But you know what? I see sis. She's always working hard. She's, we're in a virtual environment, but always in the office, doing her thing. What does she do?
Yeah.
And why don't I know her? I would say that sponsorship. And even as a DE&I professional, if you are not in the position to be a sponsor to someone, put the people who are in the position to be a sponsor in contact with them.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, or what that looks like, is be very intentional about asking questions about those that are underrepresented. For intents and purposes of what you asked, Black women.
Yeah.
So if you are, talking to XYZ leader of the operations organization, just ask.
Yeah.
You name 5 Black women in your organization. And if they can't, assign them as a task. I want you to get to know 2 Black women in your organization. And I want you to help them get to the next level. Like being that intentional about it. Yeah. Prescriptive even. Yeah. Like this is what you can do to move the needle. If you say, oh, we don't have good retention of Black women. Okay, unpack that because it's probably moving. And again, so being intentional about that. Succession planning. When you talk to leaders about succession planning, ask them, where are the Black women in the succession plan? Because if we say that we want more in leadership, I don't see any on the bench.
Yeah.
We need to be intentional about that. Because honestly, they're probably getting overlooked. Because they somewhere head down, like I'm just working hard, doing my job.
Yep. With all of that, be bold. Like these are questions that you have to ask. And
right.
I would say I won't be 100%, but in many cases we're thinking it. Now the courage comes to say it, to speak it. Because we see what's going on and what's happening. We can walk into a room and immediately see, hey, everybody looks the same. Like what? Like we see that, but then the next step is, what are we going to do about it, right? And so, how do we make sure that if you're in a DE&I role, if you have the ability to influence, the ability to impact, how are you asking the tough questions? And then when you ask those questions, what are you doing to hold people accountable? Because, just to have somebody say, yep, I'm going to do it, and then don't look at it for another year, and then we come back at succession planning time and you still don't have an answer, right? We need to figure out either some things need to change or someone need to change, but something needs to change. And so,
and to your point, be very bold in asking those questions. Yep. For example, in my role in DE&I consulting, I'm often talking to clients about their representation numbers. And, we have insert whatever. We have 15% Black representation in our workforce. I'm like, that's great. Can I get a breakdown of the levels? Of those
are
they people managers?
Yeah.
How many steps away from the C-suite are they?
How many sales? How many production associates? How many? Yeah.
Exactly. What areas of the business are they? Are they leading P&Ls? Are they on the major clients that you have?
Yeah.
If you're in sales, your 10 biggest clients, how many Black people are on those client teams? Because the 10 to 20 biggest clients that you have, those client teams, it's all eyes on them.
Yep.
They're responsible for multi-million-dollar P&Ls. If no Black people are in that team, you're not getting looked at.
Yep.
Because those are the people that are going to move. Oh, they're on so-and-so big client team. Oh, that's a rock star. That's a rock star. Okay, well, you might have a rock star on this client team that accounts for 2% of your overall revenue.
Yeah.
They ain't getting looked at.
So many things, and
it's levels to this.
We can talk through it all day here. So let me ask you this, kind of to cap it up, and I'm excited for this one right here. So, if you had to speak to a room of Black women who are looking to grow their career whether it's attain, the level at which you're at, or even go higher, what would you tell them? Give me that speech. What's that?
I would say
Ready.
Yeah, I would say go higher than me, for sure. But I would say, don't be afraid to say no.
Yep.
Don't be afraid to say yes, because sometimes our biggest opportunities are things that seem way beyond our reach.
Ooh.
And then I would also say protect your peace.
Oh, there you go. I love it. Look, don't be afraid to say yes. I might need to get a shirt that says that. Look, don't be afraid to say
That's
yes.
That's Shonda Rhimes. I can't even take
it. Shonda. Come on now.
That's Shonda. Shonda said the year of yes. You got to say yes.
Love it. And so, look, this has been an amazing conversation. Like I said, we can talk and we can chat all day. Before we go, do you have any shout outs, any parting words? And then also, where can people find you? They'd like to connect with you and kind of, dig into your brain and get some more of your thoughts and have some more discussions with you.
Yeah. I mean, you can always find me on LinkedIn. Hello, Courtney Jones, I think is LinkedIn. But you can find me on Twitter at Courtney J Said. However, I don't tweet all that much, but you can always find me there. But yeah, I mean, I love building a network. Please, find me, connect with me on LinkedIn. I love this work. I am passionate about this work. You probably could tell that. I am unapologetic about the work.
You have to be.
So, like if you, ever want to sit and brainstorm about, how to overcome these obstacles and hurdles, I love that kind of interaction. So that's where you find me. Thank you for inviting me to.
Oh, no problem. I'm excited.
Podcast.
Thanks for coming.
This was a great experience. I appreciate it.
It's been great. That does it for us.
It has been.
Thank you everyone for listening and joining us on another episode of 3D Podcast. This has been Cedric Chambers and you've been listening to Courtney Jones. We out.